Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members and subscribers and viewers from all across the world. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple of subjects. We have dangerous developments and statements coming from Israel and important developments too. The first subject that I wanted to be talking about is the threats coming from Israel, in particular from Yoav Gallant, about the fact that we are in a new phase now with Hezbollah. And the second thing, the threats from Hezbollah, because this escalation from Israel is following Hezbollah's attempted assassination of Netanyahu, which they confirmed, by the way, that Israel is blaming Iran on, and what that could mean to what Iran is saying regarding all of this. And I'll also be talking about the link between Al-Qaeda and Israel. I told you this war is called Al-Kashifa, the all-revealing war. It's revealing everyone's alliances, and who stands with who. I'm going to start off with this man here. This man is called Mahmoud Qamati. Mahmoud Qamati is the deputy head of the political side of Hezbollah. He had an interview last night with Al Jazeera to elaborate following the attempted assassination against Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, he did not outright say that they did indeed target him, but everything he said in that interview is hinting that Hezbollah is behind this. Firstly, he said that after he was asked, did you try to assassinate him? He said, we told the enemy that we are in a new phase now, the phase of inflicting pain on Israel, and that we will be having surprises. And like Israel says, the world is better without Sayyid Nasrallah, and the world is better without Sinwar. And the Americans and the people supporting them say that, the US administration, before any, of course, of our American viewers get offended. He said, we say that the world is better without them. The world is better without Benjamin Netanyahu, and the world is better without the United States administration. Meaning that Hezbollah targeted Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're owning up to it. Now, when it comes to Israel, they are now introducing a new phase. Firstly, after the attempted assassination of Benjamin Netanyahu, we started to have attacks on the southern suburbs of Lebanon. So Israel stopped attacking the Dahiya al-Janubiyya, it's called the southern suburb of Lebanon. But now after the attempted assassination, it's as if that's it. You know, we started to target it again, and now we had a statement coming from Yoav Gallant. What did Yoav Gallant say? He said, we entered a new phase with Hezbollah. So Hezbollah said, we have a new phase. Now Yoav Gallant is saying, we have a new phase too. What's that new phase, Yoav Gallant? This new phase is moving from defeating Hezbollah to eliminating Hezbollah. And that's a good aim for Israel. It's another mission impossible from Israel. Like they said, we want to eliminate Hamas. You know, mission impossible. They're saying that again for Hezbollah. And why do I say that's good that they're declaring that? Because they're again putting another aim that they will be failing at. So far, they failed in all of their military objectives, getting the prisoners back, eliminating Hamas before getting the prisoners back. Don't forget the prisoners in Israel, really. Netanyahu caring about the prisoners. Oh, no one cares about them in the government. And making Gaza not pose a threat again. And now returning the people back to the north, following Hezbollah assassination, following the intensifying situation with Hezbollah. So, not only that they haven't achieved any of their objectives before, they made the prospect of reaching those aims far, far more impossible. So with Gaza, well, they're strengthening Hamas. The prisoners, they're dying one by one. They don't know where the hell they are. You know, they said that Sinwar was hiding and whatever. They found him by coincidence over the ground fighting them. So what kind of intel do they have there, especially with all of the resources that they put? So now they're saying we want to eliminate Hezbollah. That's not to be taken lightly. Why? Because when Israel says that, that means they are entering a new phase of escalation. And this new phase of escalation, when it comes to Israel, expect more destruction similar to what's happening in Gaza, which is the second thing that I want to talk to you about. The situation in Gaza is getting far worse than before, especially in the northern part of Gaza. We had over 20,000 people being forced out of Jabalia, and the Israelis today only targeted 4 schools that are being used as shelter for children and people fleeing the war. So you're talking about a very disastrous situation, but despite all of that, they're suffering more. Today, they killed the commander of Brigade 401 in Israel. He's at a colonel level in Israel. There's a very senior figure being targeted by Hamas, again signaling that despite all of the catastrophe that Israel is inflicting on the civilian population, which is typical to Israel, they are achieving no significant progress when it comes to the people who they're claiming they're fighting. And that's the same situation with Lebanon. Likewise with Lebanon, if they are saying that we want to eliminate Hezbollah, first they expect catastrophes when it comes to Hezbollah, when it comes to Lebanon, by the way. Expect Israel to do more catastrophes and more genocide against the Lebanese people. They killed over 2,000 Lebanese so far, almost double the amount that they killed during the 2006 war so far. And again, from Hezbollah's perspective, we entered a new phase that does not have red lines. That's another thing that MahmoodOD said. There are no red lines. So Israel crossed all red lines, meaning we are at a phase of an open war, a total open war that could be leading to a much greater war later on. There is one other interesting thing that I wanted to share with you. After the attempted assassination of Benjamin Netanyahu, that Hezbollah confirmed, so that no one says it's Israel pretending, Hezbollah confirmed. They didn't deny and outright said, they're killing our leaders. There are no red lines, and the world would be better without Benjamin Netanyahu. They're saying the world is better without our leaders. We tell them the world is better without your leaders and without the United States administration as well. The world would be better without them. Now, we had statements coming from Israel blaming Iran, saying that Iran must have given the confirmation to Hezbollah. And MahmoodOD himself, he said, no, Hezbollah is a Lebanese national movement, and we base our actions based on our interests and our national interests. We don't get orders. This is something very important, because many people say Hezbollah, they're like an Iranian proxy. They do as they're ordered by Iran. No, the man is confirming. And it's not only him who's confirming that, it's Iran confirming that. And I will tell you about the, talk that we started to have after this from people who are also supportive of the resistance. So we had this report. Iran's first response to Netanyahu's accusation that it attempted to assassinate him and his wife with a drone targeting this home. The Iranian Foreign Ministry denied on Saturday evening any connection between Tehran and the drone that targeted the home of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baqai said in a statement to the Iranian news agency IRNA, commenting on Netanyahu's statements, that the Zionist entity was founded on lies and distorting the facts. That and spreading lies is the current and permanent practice of this entity and its criminal leaders. He added, in turn, the Iranian mission to the United Nations denied Tehran's responsibility for targeting Netanyahu's home with a drone. And the mission said in a statement to the American newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, that the drone attack on Netanyahu's residence was carried out by the Lebanese Hezbollah. We have responded ourselves to Israel's attack against Iran, but the latest act was carried out by the Lebanese Hezbollah. So, Israel's denying any involvement. And we'll get to that in a second. The Israeli Prime Minister's office announced earlier today that a drone launched from Lebanon hit Netanyahu's home in Caesarea, northern Israel, noting that he was not present at the home. Netanyahu stressed that the Iranian agents who tried to assassinate him made a grave mistake, considering that the assassination attempt would not prevent Israel from continuing the war. The Iranian agents who tried to assassinate me and my wife today made a grave mistake. This will not stop me or deter the state of Israel from continuing its war of renaissance. Tkuma, against our enemies to ensure our security for generations to come, Netanyahu said in a statement. He continued, I say to the Iranians and their partners in the axis of evil, anyone who harms the citizens of the state of Israel will pay a heavy price for it. What do we understand? Firstly, you have some people criticizing Iran. Why don't you take responsibility, or why don't you say that? No, it's good that Iran didn't say it. Why? Because it wasn't them. Secondly, it proves to the whole world that Hezbollah, they are a Lebanese national resistance movement. Supported by Iran, yes, but they don't follow the orders of Iran with everything. And they do whatever they see fit based on their front. Israel targeted their senior figure, and in return, they're targeting Israel's senior figure. Fair play. Is Israel playing by any laws? No, they're not playing. They're both. They haven't played by any laws. Everything is unconventional and disastrous since the beginning. It's not as if Israel was only targeting, and they know how to target specifically Israel. They know how to target people individually. If they want to send a drone to someone's house, or you saw the assassinations of Haniya and others. If they want a targeted assassination or what have you, target certain figures. But of course, Israel's main approach when it comes to their fighting is to cause destruction and target the civilian population, because that's how they operate ever since their inception. So, Hezbollah is acting based on Lebanese interests, as we understand from them. Iran has nothing to do with it. That's something that I don't personally see as something negative. And at the end of the day, Hezbollah will act according to their needs. Because also, don't forget, Israel might try to use that as leverage to try and justify their attack against Iran. And by the way, it appears to be that the Israelis are very upset with the leaks that came from the United States. We had many people in Israel, including very close aides to Netanyahu, saying that this must be a senior figure in the US administration. It mustn't have, it must be someone at a top level, not just someone rogue. No, they need to receive orders to hinder us hitting Iran or to deter us from targeting Iran. So they're taking it seriously. Okay. Will that change what they're planning to do? Well, if the leak that we spoke about yesterday was indeed valid and true, it might change certain things. However, if it's not, then well, they're going to carry out whatever they need. And now with the attempted assassination that's coming from Hezbollah against Netanyahu, they'll say, well, we want to target the supreme leader of Iran. That's from this side. Moving on to the next subject. Al-Qaeda, like George W. Bush used to call Al-Qaeda. If you remember those days of the Iraq war, there was so much propaganda going on. And whenever the United States administration, we had Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice at the time, they always used to say, believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. Everything was believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. Well, now we know what's Al-Qaeda. What's their Al-Qaeda? This was published on the Times of Israel. Al-Qaeda advisor calls for Hamas to free the hostages. He's trying to act as if he's with them, but listen carefully. And I posted a screenshot of this before, and some people start to comment like, who's the advisor, Anthony Blinken, or is it someone from the Israeli government? It shows you whose side they're on. An advisor to Al-Qaeda's likely current leader is calling for Hamas to release its Israeli hostages held in Gaza, according to an American jihadist monitoring organization site. The online declaration was made yesterday by Mustafa Hamid, also known as Abu al-Walid al-Masri, who is the father-in-law of Saif al-Adl, the man widely believed to now head Al-Qaeda, according to site. In it, Hamid claims the attention given to recovering the Israeli hostages held by Hamas since October 7th, 2023, both dead and alive, is overshadowing the fate of the Palestinian security prisoners being held by Israel. Look at the excuse, trying to act as if, he's supporting the Palestinians. It's for your own good, Palestinians. Release the hostages as well. Not the prisoners, the hostages. He also hails Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Of course, he has to cover up with something. The mastermind of the massacre, according to them. Who committed the massacre? You committed the massacre, you liars. Of the ongoing war in Gaza, was killed by Israel this week. Hamas must now immediately return the hostages and their bodies, and this file must be closed and not open again, as we know its consequences, according to the statement. No one cares about the Palestinian prisoners, neither in the media, in negotiations, nor in demonstrations, it adds. Several experts consulted by AFP say Hamid is close to higher-ups in the core Al-Qaeda organization. The group, which has spawned regional affiliates in Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and Mali, has little leverage over Hamas, which is backed by Iran. Firstly, a couple of things here. Al-Qaeda is a very suspicious organization from the origins, really. Remember, the United States used to support Al-Qaeda and the groups fighting the Soviet Union from the days of Afghanistan. The National Security Advisor at the time, Zbigniew Brzezinski, went to visit them in Afghanistan, telling them, you are the soldiers of God, your fight is holy, go and take back your mosques and houses from these evil Soviets, and it used to support them with weapons. And when the United States was supporting them with weapons, what did they do? They allowed the Arab states under the US umbrella to call for action and start sending people, right? What I like to label as the American jihad. Whenever it's acceptable, you will hear the clerics in the Arab and Muslim world, go fight these people, blah, blah. The same people who aren't saying a word, aren't saying a word, who are criticizing the Palestinian resistance against Israel. A very blatant case of right versus wrong, by the way. No, go and fight when it's an Arab country, or whenever there's an American interest, or if it's a state that the United States wants to take down. All of a sudden you hear some clerics in the Arab and Muslim world, in Saudi Arabia and in other countries, oh yes, this is the thing. Go and fight for your brothers and sisters, and. Okay. Well, everyone with a bit of a background knowledge knows how suspicious this thing is. And plus, these websites are very suspicious too. Very suspicious. A website clearly made by intelligence agencies, and Lord knows if this figure exists or not. Just statements coming out. Who's the person? I don't know who's the person. Go figure who's the person. We knew who the leaders were. We knew who the man who led ISIS was, special status in the US president in Iraq. And all of a sudden, America decides to release him, because they're very kind after he was supposedly one of the most dangerous people. So, like I said, it's revealing everything. It's revealing these movements, who's behind them, who they serve, who they don't serve, and their main operation, pushing for the campaign of Islamophobia, right? And all of this talk in the media 24/7. And now it's very clear. Al-Qaeda is saying, release the hostages. Nothing clearer than that. Now, another question here. What is Israel going to do with Iran? What is Israel going to do with Iran? And will they go on an all-out war with Iran? Firstly, there's a notion that if Israel goes on a very big attack on Iran, that this will involve most likely the United States administration. It will most likely involve the US. Now, so far, the United States failed to recruit any support for Israel. I mean, the only thing they have is them in the UK in the Red Sea, this genocide coalition. They couldn't even get the bigger group in that coalition that they made, like Italy, I think it was, in Greece, and a couple of other countries too. Some of them just sent officers, nothing active. But an attack against Iran, no. Now they're facing problems. France embargo on Israel, Italy embargo on Israel, the United Nations always criticizing them, and well, what are they going to do? But they're going to have to stick with Israel. This is the notion that is understood, unless that is the United States administration has a plan that we don't know about that might be as follows. We will support Israel so long as they are able to hold themselves together with whatever they need. Why? Because we're making money out of it, firstly. And a lot of it is about money. So the continuation, the foreign aid, the tens and hundreds of billions to them in Ukraine, it's feeding the greed of the people who thrive on the blood and destruction of other people. So fine, we're making money, continue the war. However, if it reaches a stage where that's it, Israel is about to collapse, they'll probably let it die. And some people in Israel realize that. Not many of them, some do, but their voices are not effective. Like there's a notion going on, and has been going on in Israel, by the way, for a while now, that Netanyahu is planted there to end Israel, planted by the United States to end Israel. In the meantime, feeding money to the military-industrial complex, waging all of these wars. Of course, there is a United States attempt to have, a stamp in the Middle East, but if it fails with what Israel is doing, because Israel's taking the lead when it comes to that, they might take a different position. And I personally believe that the United States administration, they already have plans for the day after Israel. Israel's collapse is just, a matter of time now. It's evident. They're going on a maximalist war. They have people betraying them from within. The supporters of Netanyahu are saying that everyone left-wing are traitors, serving Iran and serving Sinwar and serving Hamas. That's when Sinwar was still alive, because they're protesting against the government, therefore serving their enemies. Hamas supporters, they used to call them. So it's you're talking about a very, very intense situation. And Israel might have a massive attack in Iran, and not necessarily with the United States. They might do that on their own. However, there is a likelihood that the United States will at some point join them, which will lead to a far greater war. And this is what I wanted to share with you in this live stream. And let me open the space up for you, check if you have any questions. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Try and go from the beginning of the chat. Somalia, Quadrago, thank you for your super, much appreciated. And if anyone has any questions for me, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them. So I don't miss many of them. Cookie dough, but why do you support them also with money then if they only want to earn money to the MIC? It's not just that. A big part of it is that. However, there are, of course, geopolitical reasons. There are probably ideological reasons to a very large extent, because Israel is the last neo-colonial state in the region, and they want to protect it. And we have almost a full agreement in the elite in the United States establishment that they need to preserve Israel as a state in that region, because that's the United States state, and that also puts everyone else in check from a United States perspective. Arab states thinking of sort of certain independence, with the big scarecrow Israel, and also China and Russia. But again, they could have a participation with them. It's not like they couldn't. And Mahib is saying, Salam Mahmoud, thank you for always to the amazing coverage. Thank you. Is the goal of the US Israel to destroy Gaza and steal the gas reserves? I've recently read about the large amounts of natural resources. Yes, Israel knew that there are large resources outside of Gaza, and this was part of the bigger plan. And the biggest evidence that we had when it comes to that, firstly, there has been several cases of evidence coming out that Israel had some sort of prior knowledge about the 7th of October. Probably not the scale, but something was coming. Firstly, betting and stock markets when it comes to some of Israel's largest banks, profiteering, making hundreds of millions on it. And then 2 weeks into the war, what did Benjamin Netanyahu do? 2 weeks into the war that they called the biggest war on us, the biggest threat on us, an existential war, he started out sneakily without, declaring things too much, but people published it, handing out gas exploration contracts to multinational companies to look for oil off the shores of Gaza. So the big attempt was to expel the population, potentially take over Sinai afterwards, and steal the gas. The supreme leader of Iran, Said Ali Khamenei, said that the United States has a plan to make Israel a much bigger state and be the main energy exporting entity to the West, right? And that could be very true. Energy plays a big part of it, alongside with the MIC, alongside, of course, other people who profiteer from the miseries. But that has been the case for quite a very long time, and we had evidence coming out ever since the beginning about this. And Zain is saying, I saw news about the king of the UAE, I think you mean the crown prince, visiting Russian President Putin today. What do you think the reasons behind this sudden visit? Well, I haven't really read about this visit, to be honest with you, but I think it would be linked to the increased tensions in the region. Firstly, we had a recent visit from Arakchi, the Iranian foreign minister, with Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the Egyptian president. Clearly, there's coordination here and talks about how to try and reach a solution, where things might be going, and potentially the role of Egypt in case Israel has a large attack and Iran's attack on Israel. Now, remember, Egypt previously said they will not be, Egypt confirmed, they will not be taking down any missiles going to Israel. Remember that. And the the Haifa drone from Ansarullah went over Egypt. They tried to say that no, it went through Libya and then went through Israel. No, it went through Egypt because Egypt didn't want to, make it more tense. But that is an important development. Now, with regards to the UAE, listen, don't think that the UAE, and because of their ties with Israel, that everything is, no, they have interest. They have very good relations with Russia too. Likewise, with the Saudis, they also have very good relations with Russia. And it's not as if they would be like outright supporting Israel. As a matter of fact, they were part of the countries in the Gulf that said we will not be allowing Israel to conduct an attack against Iran from our territories. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And Qatar has the biggest airfield of the United States in the region. Saudi Arabia over a dozen, if I'm not mistaken. So if they outright declare that they will not allow them, then clearly it's not like I said, it's not like it's going to be easy for them to go and attack Iran. Tam McIntosh, Mahmoud, Israeli news state today that they use Sinwar's body as a bargaining for all the hostages. I don't think that's going to work. Because firstly, Israel is trying to underplay the level of leverage of what they call the hostages, who are prisoner of wars with the Palestinian resistance, as a big card. How? Firstly, by killing them. They killed a third of their prisoners in Gaza. Their ongoing targeting. Think about it for 1 second. For 1 second, we spoke about it many times. If you cared, I'm Israel. Let's say I'm Israel or I'm Netanyahu, and I care about the Israelis who are held in Gaza. I had a massive operation, the biggest attack in history, and many Israelis were kidnapped to Gaza. And I don't care about the lives of the Palestinians. Right? Let's say I'm Netanyahu and I don't care about the lives of Palestinians, but I do care about the lives of the Israelis. Would you go and carpet bomb Gaza? How can you do that? How can you do that, even if you say that you don't care about the lives of the Palestinians, but you care about the lives of the Israelis? It doesn't make sense. What does that tell you? That they tried to take them down, all of them, and like I said, they killed them. And many statements from people who were released said that Israel targeted us many times, and some of them said we were critically wounded, and we spoke about them intensely previously. You wouldn't do that. So, but there's still pressure. So even if the government is not taking that approach, you have families, you have the people protesting, that's pressure. And even if Israel manages to kill all of them, or something happens to them in Gaza and they never return, that will be a stain that's always there and a reason for constant tension inside of Israel. This is something you need to understand. This is bigger than an earthquake in Israel, because the concept of the safety of the Israeli life is gone. By what? By the government's actions and by the military's actions. So the Israel is now saying, okay, that's why you have more refusal to go and serve in the army as well. People are struggling. The army, why? Because, well, to them, you're not protecting me. And the parents of the Israelis who are reservists called to go to Gaza are saying, well, you're not going to bring my son back if he gets kidnapped, and you're sending him to die. When the son of the prime minister, who is in a serving age, who can be a reservist, is in the United States. You see? So I don't think Hamas, it will affect anything with Hamas, although Israel will try and use it as leverage. Because firstly, he's dead. Secondly, well, you have people who are alive in Gaza. And by the way, the people who are alive in Gaza are like military commanders. Don't forget, the people who were listening, we still didn't reach the Gaza division. Hamas and the Palestinian resistance kidnapped top figures in the Gaza division on the 7th of October. Cisco, we spoke about that before. I saw a claim that Trump has gotten Netanyahu to delay Israel's strike on Iran until Trump becomes president. We heard that before as if, he wants to give him a favor because Donald Trump wants to come and be viewed as the person who solves all of the problems. Recently, he had a statement that he will stop the war immediately as if he wins the presidency in Ukraine, first, before Gaza. Because according to him, we're sending them hundreds of billions and this man is a very good salesperson, he says about Zelensky, because every time he comes to visit the US, he goes back with $100 billion. And he does not want that, according to him. Again, we will see once he gets in power and if things get implemented. And with Gaza, well, he said previously, he's going to stop it. And if he was there, it wouldn't have happened and Hamas wouldn't have attacked Gaza. But Donald Trump is still tied with the Israeli lobby in the United States. So that puts a lot of restrictions on Donald Trump. And again, it's an assumption that could happen. But Netanyahu sees Netanyahu first, not Trump first. So if Netanyahu doesn't feel like if he reaches a deal, he will be protected and continue his position as the prime minister, then he will not stop the war. If he would stop the war, he would have to secure himself for the future. But now it's too far gone now. Why? Because of the levels of that we reached, the levels in Gaza, the levels in Lebanon, the levels with Iran in the region, and the fact that Israelis and especially people in the military, like the IDF chief of staff, when they started increasing their attacks against Hezbollah, he said, we've been waiting for this opportunity for years. So, of course, they didn't go in an all-out war with Hezbollah, but now they have an excuse. And if that excuse goes away with a ceasefire, then what are they doing? They are giving Hezbollah and Hamas time to gain back their power and plan for another attack against them. This is the Israeli thought process, that we don't want to reach that level. We don't want to have another 7th of October. So this is our opportunity. This is our time. And if you ask or if you attack Israel, then that means you will lose territories. If you attack the small Israel, you will get a greater Israel. This is what Israel wants to show the people of the region. Jack Ayub saying Israel thinks because they killed Sinwar that the war is over. There is 1,000 more Sinwars. Long live Palestine. What do you think, Brother Mahmoud? Yeah, I said that many times. Killing the top figures never stops the movement itself. It increases its strength and capabilities, because we've had that happening as a pattern, not only in Palestine, but in Lebanon as well, and in other locations too. So, of course, targeting Sinwar will not stop Hamas and the resistance against Israel. It will only increase it in power. And as a matter of fact, Israel did not want it, because it was a coincidence the way they killed him. They did not want it to be in that way. They wanted to have, an operation. So you can't say that it was like an intelligence operation success or whatever, because they found out that he was actually fighting them. He probably killed like tens or hundreds of troops during his fight. He's been fighting for months at least, according to some reports, choosing this path over just taking his political role, trying to lead the negotiations or talk or whatever. Clearly, the man had a different type of thinking and approach. And they embedded his position as someone who bravely confronts his enemies when he doesn't even have to, in that manner. So absolutely, it won't stop it. It won't stop it. But again, Israel never took actions that serves its interest. The only approach that they've had is violence and more wars and more destruction. And like I said before, you want to defeat Hamas, you want to defeat Hezbollah, defeat the reasons that they established themselves upon. What are the reasons that they established themselves upon? The oppression and occupation. Oppression, occupation, injustice. If you remove that and you have equality, right? And if you have freedom, well, what else is there left? But again, Israel does not understand when it comes to the negotiations. As a matter of fact, we've seen 30 years of negotiations with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and what that leads to, more settlements or squatting establishments than they could ever imagine, protected by a Palestinian peace partner, more aggression, more oppression, to a level where now, they can easily talk about taking completely the West Bank and potentially expelling the Palestinian people in the West Bank. Derek, do you think there will be any defense deal between Iran and Russia at the BRICS meeting in Kazan in a few days? Well, I think any defense deal has already been done between Iran and Russia, not to a level where they have a strategic defense agreement yet. We might see that, but it hasn't happened yet. Like a defense pact, meaning if that country is attacked, I'm participating. It's like an attack on me. But it could reach that stage. It could reach that stage. And thank you for that. That was from Derek. Jay Artiste, any chance that the Saudis will feel forced to stop the USA supporting USA and Zio soon? I think that Saudi Arabia wants to be as uninvolved as possible with this. It's as an administration, as an establishment. Saudi Arabia, the last time they actually took in a position that was effective was during the reign of King Faisal, when he had an oil embargo on the West, basically, for supporting Israel and its war against Egypt and Syria. And he was later assassinated in a very shady assassination. That, it's not far-fetched to say that the United States had some sort of involvement with that and played on the power grab battle between Saudi royals, because there are a lot of battles inside the royal family. So I don't think they're going to do that. Shambili, Mahmoud, have you heard about the tens of thousands of Israelis moving to Cyprus to buy commercial residential properties in high number? Well, it's not only Cyprus, it's everywhere. I mean, I have some people in the comment section come and tell me, Mahmoud, I live in Australia or in New York and this and that, and we had a massive rise in Israelis coming. It's normal, because who wants to live there? And again, that's another failure coming from Israel. When you lose the sense of security for your own population, then what else is there left? The situation is beyond anyone's imagination internally in Israel. I found it bizarre. They published a stat recently after they conducted a poll for the residents of the northern part that is having the clashes with Hezbollah. In the beginning, in the early days, 80,000 fled. Now the number is in the hundreds of thousands. But they had a poll with them. How many of you would be willing to go back if there is a settlement? Right? If we reach some sort of settlement between us and Hezbollah, 80% said no. 80% said no, even if there's peace. So what does that tell you? What kind of indication does that give you on the rest of the country? Because it's not only the north now attacked, it's central Israel attacked, and what Hezbollah cut the electricity off the biggest settlement near Jerusalem. So it's very, very understandable, and they downplay the numbers as much as possible. A Russian president is with us in the chat. Vladimir Putin is saying, Salam Mahmoud, speaking of Al-Qaeda, weren't Palestinian factions fighting Al-Qaeda in Yarmouk refugee camp? Yeah, there were battles between Al-Qaeda and some of the Palestinian factions in Syria. There were battles between these people with these ideologies in Gaza and Hamas, to a level where once, and again, who's tied with them? Israel. There's a group in Gaza called Jaysh al-Islam, the Army of Islam. They kidnapped Alan Johnston, a BBC journalist. Who released him? Hamas, after they threatened the movement. Release him or. And Hamas were talking with them. It's like, what do you want? Talking about all of this. No, you need to implement Sharia or whatever. And killing people. So Hamas had negotiations with them. And they sent a representative to speak with them at one point. That was before 2010. When the representative went in and tried to meet with them, do you know what they did? They had someone exploding himself in everyone. And then Hamas took fierce action against them and took all of them down. And again, who are these movements tied with? Like we spoke about Al-Qaeda, Israel. And the United States and other Western intelligence agencies in many cases, like the cases with Syria. It's clear. Naimit, thank you for your super. Why is the Ummah watching this and not stopping it? I'm losing faith. Well, I think people... Firstly, many people would prefer to focus on other stuff. To them, this case might be, too much of a headache, and whatever it is. Then you have people being poisoned with, religious eschatological fantasies, waiting for a savior to come and save them without doing anything. Then you have people under dictatorships. Then you have people saying that, well, no, these people, what's happening is actually, no, the Palestinians, what they're doing is wrong. And then you have people run by governments pretending to be doing something and they're not doing anything. And I think when we look at this, you look at it from a global perspective. I mean, if we don't just talk about the Arab and Muslim world, and of course, if you truly had a representation of like the Arab world and the Muslim world, really and truly, I mean, the majority of the people support the Palestinian people. I mean, it's so clear. But you do live under massive dictatorships, and in many cases under the U.S. administration's thumb, like the case with many Arab states. However, if you look at it not only from the Arab and Muslim world, but from a global perspective too, what is the population? What is the population's approach towards this? Over half a year ago, we started having talks about banning TikTok in the United States. TikTok is one of those apps that isn't as affected by the propaganda and the pressure. There was a stat published as to the position when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. 99% were post-supportive of Palestine. 99%. And the 1% could have been, by the way, I don't know, bots or something. However, that says a lot. If you truly have a representation of the will of the people. And there is a very large attempt from governments, from the mainstream media, to downplay the level of support for the Palestinian cause, suppress it, terrorize the people who support it with draconian measures, terrorist laws, all sorts of talk, and push for the Israeli narrative and justify it as much as possible. This is how they're keeping any sort of legitimacy in. Because think about it, they could have stripped Israel of any legitimacy a long time ago, before the 7th of October. But let's say after the 7th of October, they could have stripped them of legitimacy from the first day they started attacking Gaza. Telling them, hold on a second, you said you want to eliminate Hamas, you immediately started destroying civilian buildings, 500, 600, 700 people a day. The other day we had the commemoration, first year commemoration of the attack on Al-Ma'madan. And they're still doing the same atrocities now. 500 people in one go. And then mainstream media tried to blame it on the Palestinians. Look at the levels. So, one thing we need to remember is, from a global perspective, not just from an Arab Muslim perspective, the general theme of anyone with an interest in the matter is supportive of the Palestinian side. Let's not be delusional if you have a genuine interest. But again, the mainstream media and people in power always push for the narrative that is supportive of Israel, even when they are trying to show sympathy with the Palestinian people by using the same methods of propaganda, of terrorism, of intimidation, of anyone who supports them, crackdowns. We're seeing in some countries what's happening. So you need to remember that when you talk about like the global support and the support in Arab and Muslim states as well. And again, they do vary. I mean, you do find more sympathy in certain locations more than others. That's undeniable. Mahib is saying, what do you think has triggered France and Italy suddenly to impose an arms embargo? Well, firstly, if we start off with France, after the Sykes-Picot agreement between the British and the French, we had a split. So Britain took control or influence over the areas of Palestine and beneath. So Palestine, Jordan, these areas. France took influence over Lebanon and Syria. So the French have a traditional influence on Lebanon. That's why Macron didn't take it nicely when Israel started to attack further on Lebanon. And don't forget, Macron himself, he said in the beginning of the war, we need to form a coalition to support Israel. Look at the massive shift. That's a very big shift. It doesn't say anything good about Macron, by the way, but for him to reach that level, you must imagine what lengths Israel went to a level where they started to open a confrontation with him, and they stopped inviting Israel to arms expos in France, banning them from coming. And Italy, their UNIFIL peacekeeping forces, you have people from so many countries. So it's going to create a problem with the country. Why? Well, because Israel is saying now you're a legitimate target. Why? Because Hezbollah is using you as a human shield when they're using them as human shields. Do you understand? So these are, of course, part of the things that influenced this move. But again, there's a pattern. It's been a year now, and there have been so many calls for a ceasefire. Hamas accepted the ceasefire that Biden proposed. They welcomed the UN resolution promoted by the United States of America. And it's evident for everyone that it's Israel that doesn't want peace or a ceasefire or any solution. Do you understand? So it reached a level where we were with Italy and France, they were like, oh, that's it. There's no more talking. That's why I say it's like, well, strip off legitimacy of them. You were so quick to do that with Russia, okay? And again, large topic over there, but what Israel is doing is incomparable with Russia. Incomparable. Livia, please, do you have any thoughts on the possibility of assassination attempts during the upcoming BRICS summit in Russia? I highly doubt so. That would be very dangerous. You know, starting target figures in the BRICS summit in Russia, that would be a big provocation that would only unite the BRICS even further. And that wouldn't serve them. But again, you know, sometimes you think like these people running these establishments like Israel, the US, and NATO, they're quite thick when it comes to their own interest. They're so blinded by financial and geopolitical greed that they lose sight. And this is typical arrogance and ignorance. X is saying, bro, nobody dares to attack Iran, you will see. Look, there are many reasons for them not to attack Iran. There's already a bond forming between Iran and Russia and China, and Russia's restructuring and rebuilding, nurturing its relations with every anti-US location. Putin visited Venezuela. He visited so many countries recently, well, several months back now, in North Korea too, to try and unite these countries more. If they go on an attack in Iran, which is the biggest oil exporter to China too, you're causing a lot of problems. But again, it's not like they can't. And it's not like we have rational people in power. You have reckless, irrational players. So, if you're still enabling Netanyahu, a genocidal, psychopathic war criminal, then it's not surprising that you would go on an attack against Iran. It wouldn't be like a shock. And although we have, of course, problems with the international oil trade, the global economy, it's going to be disastrous. But then again, look at the economy of Europe after the war in Russia. Miss Muslima, Egypt and Jordan was dropping food on North Gaza. Do you know anything more about that, Brother Mahmoud? Well, I said at the time, you know, that they're kind of breaking the Israeli siege by this airdropped aid, which is very, very dangerous. Unfortunately, we had a young child killed because of the airdropped aid. And what we said at the time, if you have the capacity to fly your military airplanes over Gaza to drop aid, then you have the capacity to drop other stuff on the genocide forces. Mahib, would it be right thinking there's only two outcomes now? Either Israel as a whole collapses or all of the resistance fronts do and Greater Israel becomes true. I think this is where we're headed. I think Israel started this war in a maximalist manner. And parts of the resistance fronts have taken an approach of escalating depending on the situation without necessarily, I'm not going to say understanding, it's not like they don't understand, but without necessarily going to the same scale as Israel is reaching. And they could have had their own reasons for that. I mean, one of them was, or would have been, this international situation when it comes to Israel, the international global opinion, the delegitimization of Israel slowly but surely. The more time went by, the more embargo, the more delegitimization, the more criticism, the more close allies cutting certain stuff. Not to all of the levels required, but that's what's happening. Has that been a strategy that Iran and the other resistance fronts taken? And could they have seen it coming? And do they know that by dragging it further, Israel will only make things worse for itself? Therefore, they are preparing the ground to a level where people are telling Iran now, or Hezbollah or the others, well, they're targeting your civilians, go and target their civilians. Do you understand where the argument is, at what level now? But it's absolutely a case of Israel on a maximalist war. They want everything. And it's and one other thing, by the way, that Mahmoud Qamati, the figure from Hezbollah who we spoke about in the beginning of this interview, said, he also said that this is to be or not to be war. Now, to be or not to be. And one day after, Yoav Gallant confirmed that. What did he say? We moved from the stage of defeating Hezbollah to a stage of eliminating Hezbollah, meaning it's a war of be or not to be. And forget about the Hezbollah Hamas things. Israel and the mainstream media propaganda uses them just as fronts. The target is the whole region, the whole people, It's not as if these people, no, they don't want any other country to have anyone inside them even having this approach when it comes to the United States and Israel and having any sort of independence, financially, politically, militarily, whatever it is. So I think it's just getting bigger and bigger and more intense and more intense. And every time we see something new coming up in terms of escalation, more threats. This is the first ever targeted assassination against an Israeli prime minister. First ever in history by a foreign entity against Israel. That's a massive, massive thing. It's a big deal. I know we're, of course, witnessing a massive war anyway, and a big catastrophes and a genocide in Gaza. But let's not underestimate the fact that a prime minister has been targeted directly. Intel, where he is, where he moves, Israelis giving information to the resistance. These things are not easy. And let's go to your next question. By the way, Debbie and Marcel and Name It, thank you so much for your contribution. Much appreciated. Mind over matter. Do you think the BRICS summit is more important for the world than the US election? Of course, it's more important because it's a summit of movement, an organization that's growing and that is creating a new multipolar world. The United States election is the same comedy. It's the same theater time after time. Two people funded by the same people from behind, acting like they are coming up with something new. Small differences here and then, that's it. So of course, because you're talking about the fate of the majority of the world. What's the United States and its closest allies in terms of percentage, states-wise? 15, 16, 17%. The rest of the world, over 80%, 83%. It's very important. And what the BRICS first are growing, as well. Countries who are traditionally considered to be linked with the US are joining them. Iran joined them, Egypt, the UAE. So it's very, very important. And again, if the United States had an approach of well, let's understand that we're no longer the main superpower. Let's actually stop policing the world. Let's take our troops back from all of these countries. Then good. But unfortunately, there are some people in the United States administration who still think that, no, they need to keep up all of this intimidation, again, for greed, for elitist greed, not population interest, by the way. Why? Because look at the population. Free Palestine, Salam Muhammad, don't believe the US will let Israel be decapitated. The US will do anything short of letting Israel use nukes. Zionists are too strong here in the US. Well, listen, here's an argument. Netanyahu and many in Israel, very significant figures, are saying that this is an existential war, and they have been saying that this is an existential war since the beginning. Did the US go and fight on their behalf or fight with them? We know that we had certain situations where they might have provided, I mean, there were assumptions that some potentially American pilots carried out strikes before, but again, not confirmed. We know they support them with intelligence. We know they support them with money. We know they support them with weapons. But did they actually go and deploy forces to fight on behalf of Israel or side by side with Israel? Not to the level where it's gonna stop this threat, right? If hardly any. So the United States, of course, they would be trying to support Israel as much as possible, but they're not naive. The CIA projected from over a decade ago that Israel doesn't have much left. So decision makers in the United States are preparing for the collapse of Israel. It's not that they know. They definitely are. They're going to try and push its survival for very long. But how effective would that be? And thank you very much for that. Jimmy Eyes, I heard last night that Russia sent Su-35 fighters join Iran. If that is so, they will likely be piloting them also, wouldn't they? Have you heard if this is the case? I have heard and also read reports that said that they sent them the Su-35s. If they have, and again, there is no confirmation, and I'm not sure it would be in either party's interest to reveal such information. They need to keep some surprises. There is a very high likelihood that Russian fighter pilots would be using them, because it takes a very long time to train people on them. And if Russia already considers Iran a red line, then they're willing to go and fight. It's not as if we didn't have reports of people who are pro-Iran fighting with Russia. And they also had military drills together in Syria too. So that's likely. It's likely. But again, there hasn't been a confirmation that, you know, is substantial and verified that they indeed sent them those fighter jets. D. Van Salam always asks, but how do you think Israel will try and take a chunk of Saudi? Well, according to the new Middle East plan that Condoleezza Rice published in the mid-2000s after the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, Saudi Arabia was not a sovereign full state. It was split into a wholly Islamic state which includes Mecca and Medina, and the rest would be Saudi Arabia. So, well, if Israel claimed that Palestine belongs historically to the Jewish people, they can go and claim that Saudi Arabia belongs to the Jews of Haifa. Right? What's stopping them from? But again, in these governments, like Saudi Arabia, I think they don't realize the extent. I think when it comes to these risks, they're not really calculating things properly. And I believe that this naive approach puts them in a very risky situation, because Jordan is at risk, Egypt is at risk. Even if you're tied with them, or if you have a peace treaty with them, you are at risk. And Saudi Arabia too. Faint signals from Vega. U.S. is the greatest purveyor of violence today. Must be stopped. U.S. has been the greatest purveyor of violence since World War II. How many wars did they have across the world? How many millions of people they killed? And they blame it on other people, again, through this propaganda machine. And they must be stopped. Absolutely. This insanity must be stopped. And Dr. X Salam, thank you so much, my friend. Much appreciated for your super. Let's take the last couple of questions before we wrap up. And thank you everyone for your participation. Again, sorry for not reaching all of your comments. And Ronin Mali, thank you so much for that. May Allah protect you. Thank you so much. Tori, Salam Mahmoud, why is Putin insisting on the two-state solution? Well, the two-state solution is the solution that has been internationally deemed as the traditional solution after the partition plan of Palestine. And many people like to follow that rhetoric to this day. Putin, Erdogan, whatever, for their own reasons. It's totally delusional to talk about a two-state solution. Don't care who it comes from. Everyone should be talking now about delegitimizing the ethno-supremacist apartheid genocidal entity called Israel and implementing a country with equal rights for everyone between the Jordan River to the sea. Palestinians, Israelis, Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, whatever you. Any talk apart from that is feeding to continue the problem. Why? I'll tell you why. Because you would still be legitimizing an apartheid, genocidal, ethno-supremacist state on one part of Palestine. And that's a problem. That's a massive problem. How can you justify a state based on this ideology anywhere, on any part? How can you do that when you constantly talk and preach about democracy and equal rights and human rights? What is that? So all of the talk from everyone really should end when it comes to that. And the only talk should be about stripping legitimacy of a state that has been founded on land grabbing, theft, oppression, ethnic cleansing, occupation, brutality, mass murder, and genocide now in Gaza. And that's been evident for the past year for people who haven't been even heard about the situation. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Thank you, for all of your comments. Of course, apologies if I haven't reached all of them. I hope I added some beneficial information for you tonight in this live stream. Faint signals from Vegas, Dr. X, Ronnie and Mali, Stephen Burrows, Mahib, Debbie, Marcel Ploger, Naimit, Maine, ×2, and Somalia, Quedraugo. Thank you very much for your supers. I'll hopefully be out with the video after this, and we'll hopefully have a live stream tomorrow too. In the meantime, stay blessed, everyone. Take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.